So on today's video, we're going to talk about ample guitars and their riffer system, but more specifically, their randomizer or their dice roll system, and how it's quite interesting and effective for creating original acoustic guitar parts in this case. So I'm going to play this demo and then we're going to talk about how it was done. So inside Ample Guitars is the riffer system here, and it's found on this page. So if you open your guitars, normally by default it's on this page. But if you go to riffer, you can see that it has a different display and a different system, and it's a really interesting and capable system. But if you click on this button here, which opens and closes the little dice system here. And originally I thought this was an interesting little novelty and probably not worth getting into. And I didn't for a long time until yesterday. I decided to give a look at it and found that it was indeed quite an interesting and I believe powerful way to create guitar notes. Because and strums. So if you consider that we can create beautiful chord progressions in something like scalar and then add really nice original guitar notes and strums with those chords, or you could go to this tab here and see a bunch of chords that work well with guitar and load several different banks of those chord changes here. And those chord changes you could write inside of scalar and use them to guide these notes generated here. So really it's an interesting way to create these notes and drag them into your DAW and begin to build a song. So now let's take a look exactly how this works. If we do have our riffer open, and that's on this tab here, so that's by default. And then if you go over to the riffer tab, you can then click this button, which will open the randomizer and the dice system really. So what does it do? If you click it, it will populate the number of bars you have set here, or measures, with one simple little idea of notes. So it just did that, and if I scoot this over, you can see I do have 4 bars of one single musical idea repeating. So I'm going to play it. So you get the idea. And you may say to yourself, well, that's great, but who wants to hear just a repeating one track, one idea repeating? Well, the great part about this is that inside of Riffer itself, you could change you can edit. So I could grab these notes here on the second measure, and I could change the root of it. So you can do it that way. So if I was to change it from the C to, let's say, an F2, now if we go back and play it from the beginning, you'll hear a difference there. So if you were to create your changes that way, you would end up with a nice 4-bar or 4-measure changing pattern according to your song. And if you knew what all your chord changes were, say you had your chord track already set up from Scalar or wherever you got your chord progression from, you could go in here and change all of these measures, and so you could then just drag it out. So then you use the drag out button here and drag it to your track, and there you have your original. If we double click on it, we can see those notes up here. So now we have those notes. So it's a very handy way to create original notes in endless changes and variety, and then to go in and you can also cut notes, and you can edit. You can add, if you draw in a note with the pencil tool, you can drag in and make a strum, and then you can, as long as there's no notes stopping it, which there are here, but you can delete notes. So now you can again select these notes and drag out the strum to be longer, right? So you can edit inside of Riffer itself. But you may find this to be a little bit tedious and not as fast as working inside a DAW. And so the next way I'm going to explain of creating these notes and editing them much quicker, I think, is a better workflow. So now if we use this system inside the DAW and we create one measure at a time, we can edit much quicker according to how we like to edit inside the DAW, and we already know. And we can follow, which in this case I have a little chord progression with 4 chord changes in the scale of C major. So just as a quick demonstration, we can say that, okay, we know the rules of how this works now, and we can tell our guitar player what we want to play every measure at a time and edit as we go. And we can make sure it's in the right chord. So we're at C major, and if we roll the dice to how we have it set up, we should get some nice notes following those rules. If we listen to it, and we may like that, or we may not like it, and we can change the rules. But as a quick demonstration, let's roll again. Listen to that. And we could adjust our beats per minute now if we wanted to, and even change the time signature. But let's roll again. And let's say that we like that. We can quickly drag it out to our first bar on the correct track here. And that's what we get. And we see that the notes are all green because we have set up our chord track and our chord color helper. And that all makes sense because it was created in C major. So these should indeed be all green, and they are. So if we want to have our chord be C major, everything's fine. We don't need to do anything. And down here, you'll see these little data points here, and that's something you can just delete. As the way we're using this, we don't need those. Or you can just leave them. But here we have our first finger picking notes in a chord of C. So let's listen. And that's great. That's what we wanted, and that's the rules we set up. And so now we can go to the next one, and we can say that, okay, the next chord up here we see is F major. So we just go down to F, and we leave it on major, and we roll for that. Or we could have left, actually, if you wanted to have your guitar player play the exact same notes, but just have it changed to F, you wouldn't even roll. You would just take this, and you would copy it over to the next measure, and then you'll see here that some of the notes are now, because it's still the C major notes, you would just take these and move them into the correct, according to how the color system works. So now if we play these two bars together and loop them, so we have the same musical idea with just an F major chord change, which in many cases will be what you want. Or you may want to change just one or two of these notes. You can cut them, you can dice them, you can slice them. You could make them into a rhythm. So according to how you have your grid set up, say to eighth notes, you could easily add some rhythm in there. And so you're able to edit all these notes and still be within the rules that you have set up. So let's just listen to that now. So even just doing it this way, you have so many opportunities to create some beautiful guitar picking. But you could do things this way and continue on and to our next chord change, to the B flat and then the E flat. Or a more interesting thing to do would be to, and I'll just move it over to the next bar here, is say that, well, why not, you can have our guitar player who's going to go B flat. So if we go to the B flat, which would be A sharp in this case, we could go A sharp, and we could change it up. We could have a major seventh, or we could go minor. But in this case, we're going to stick to exactly what we have here. And so that's what we'll do. And we may change it to a strum, and we may say, okay, we want the guitars to play just a 4-part strum and with less variation, and let's roll that. So now for our next measure in our little song idea, we can drag this out, and if we glue these all together, and play it and loop it, and we can see that all these new notes here, and I'll just do a little housekeeping by getting rid of these to not confuse anybody. But now we should have some strumming with our musical idea. Now this may or not make sense musically, but you can see the technique here of the different ways you can have your guitar player play. So you can see that that's really quite interesting to be able to have strums and all kinds of different plucked notes in different ways according to every chord that you would need, and have different dynamics. So let's turn the dynamics back up, and let's say for our next one, will be the next chord up here, which is an E flat. We're going to go E flat, so that would be D sharp, I believe, if I got that right. So we can generate that, and we can say that the next measure might be something different, might be something very sparse. So in this case, I had it set up to 4. Maybe we'll go 5, and we'll get some ideas here. And you may like that. If you don't, just re-roll. That's kind of nice. Let's use that. And so it's a little sparser, and you could set up just to have one note if you wanted. So you get a lot of variation and a lot of different things you can do to tell your guitar player, how you like things to be. So the notes are correct because we have it set up correct according to our chord progression. And now we can glue that in there and play the whole thing. So just move this out a little bit. Go to the beginning. So isn't that nice to have so many different ways you can tell your guitar player to produce measures of music for your guitar? And as stated, this wasn't created just to make some beautiful melody, but just to show you the mechanics of how this works. So you could easily take this system and create beautiful original measures of guitar notes and strums, and according to whatever chord progression that you want. And you could create some beautiful chord progressions in scalar. And really, that's how I created the initial demo idea I showed. So if we zoom back out a little bit, we can see that all these guitar parts were created using this dice system. And then I went in and edited some of those notes just to make them more of my personality of what I wanted that guitar player to play. But it was very easy to do because I had all the bass notes, and then I also made a chord version because I got my chord idea from Scalar or wherever and just repeated that. But since I knew my chord progression, I created a MIDI track from that and was able to easily create an easy bass track because I just made that MIDI track of those chord progression there and dragged it into easy bass and dragged it into easy keys, and really within 2 mouse clicks created a piano track to go with it and a bass track to go with it. So I hope this helps to give you some new ideas on how to use the ample guitar, and not to overlook the very interesting and capable dice system, which you can have your guitar player play notes just the way you want them in whatever chords that you choose. And also creates strums. So if you like the video, please subscribe and stay tuned for more videos, and we'll see you on the next one.